Oh, mine came on. There you go.
Yep. You ready? Well, you good?
Good.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Amy White. It's my pleasure to begin this public hearing tonight and to welcome each of you. I thank you all for coming. I welcome my colleagues here as well. I do want to point out that Dr. Scott Horn will not be with us tonight. He had a prior work engagement that was scheduled without his input, so he had to attend that function and will not be here to receive comments, but the rest of us will be. So with that being said, I would like to get us started. And Mr. Clinton, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Glad to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like us all now to collectively observe a moment of silence, perhaps pondering the importance of the information we're about to receive and the importance of the decisions that we will make subsequent to that information. Let us remember that we are making decisions for a lot of people and addressing a lot of issues and a lot of needs. Let us look at this from a community standpoint and through the lens of the strong community that we are. So please let us have a moment of silence. Thank you all. Just as a reminder, there is one item on the agenda tonight. That will be a presentation by Katie Davis, after which we will follow with public comment. I want to remind everyone that no board action will be taken tonight. No votes will be taken. We are here to receive comments, and we are here to for our information and to ask Ms. Davis questions that we may have. So that being said, I'm going to ask Katie to come on down. Thank you so much for the work that you have done prior to this night. It's all going to culminate here, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and all those that we have in attendance this evening. As you mentioned, I will be doing a presentation that is going to cover the budget that was advertised in the Fincastle Herald on March 26th and again on April 2nd. So this information will be reflective of the same information that was advertised. So tonight we're going to go through the budget calendar, take a look at a little bit of an overview, some of the factors that shaped the budget process for this year. Then we'll move into the revenue outlook, as well as an overview of the different expenditure categories and what those represent. Then we'll talk about some highlights for both the operating expenditures and the capital improvement plan, as well as ongoing budget considerations for this year. So here we have our roadmap that shows the schedules of planned communications throughout this budget process. As you can see, this began back in December. We are nearing the end. We are currently at the public review, which a public hearing for April 9th, followed by a scheduled budget and tax adoption on April 22nd. So as I mentioned, there were some factors that shaped this process. Every budget year has its own challenges and opportunities that really frame what we do. For FY26, one of the biggest challenges was relatively small revenue growth that was being expected for that. On the flip side, increasing service demands, particularly in the areas of recreation, public safety, and education. Additionally, we needed to ensure that there was sufficient funding for ongoing projects such as the public safety radio project. And we also were dealing with some uncertainty surrounding the state budget, which of course impacts local funding, particularly as it relates to the schools. So some strategies we implemented to address these issues. First, we created a stronger framework to provide guidelines for all budget requests. This helped to set realistic expectations and goals at the start of the process. And actually on the next slide, I'll have a little bit more information on that. Additionally, the goal was set to minimize any impact to citizens by maintaining existing tax rates and not increasing those. Priority was given to education, public safety, and recreation while trying to minimize growth in other functional areas. Additionally, we began the process of doing monthly communications and updates to the board and the public, allowing for greater information exchange early on and feedback. And lastly, the county is exploring timing the appropriations for schools to be on a quarterly basis to allow for greater flexibility if it's needed. So as I mentioned, this is sort of a summary of the guidance that was sent out at the beginning of the budget process that really helped shape those requests before they were made, and certainly cut out a lot of the work at the beginning by doing so. So that included, number one, a maximum increase of 3% in non-personnel operating requests, that those requests align with existing board priorities and projects. Also, again, prioritization for parks and recreation services and facilities expansion, as well as a focus on employee recruitment and retention. So here we have a look at the revenue projections. You can see on the top bar up there, we have the adopted FY25 adopted revenue figure of $92.2 million. And the advertised or projected revenue of $96.8 million for FY26. And you can see the funding source is demonstrated by the color, with green being for local, blue for state, and dark blue for federal. So we are projecting an increase of $4.5 million from the FY25 adopted figures, and this is primarily coming from local sources and makes up about $4.2 million of that 4.5. We do have a projected use of fund balance of $2 million, so that brings the total sources for this proposed budget to $98.8 million. There was some increase in state revenue. However, that is directly offset by related expenditures to that additional revenue. So as you can see in FY25, the portion of local revenue was 84.5%. For FY26, it's 84.9%. So the primary burden continues to be on local revenue as a funding source. So digging in a little bit more to what is included in that local revenue, which is what this chart represents, you can see off to the right, the biggest portion of that, almost half, is general property taxes, which makes up 48.7% of that $82.2 million total. The second largest category is personal property taxes at 16%. And then the third largest category being other local taxes at 14%. Now, we did see a decline in this of about $400,000 is what we're anticipating due to lower expected performance in sales tax, meals tax, and hotels tax. The remaining categories are much smaller and make up about 21% of the total for the local revenue. So moving on into expenditures, this is sort of a reference guide. We're going to be using these categories to discuss expenditures, and this sort of orients what is included in that and helps, I think, create a clearer picture of what we're talking about. So first up is general government. This is going to be most of the elected offices as well as the functional business offices that really support the overall operations of the county. Finance, for example, would fall under this category. Next is judicial administration, which is comprised of courts and those related support offices that all work to carry out the judicial processes. It should be noted that a lot of the employees that fall under this category are actually state employees, but the county does pay for a lot of the administrative and operating expenses for those, as well as some portion of some of the salaries. Next is public safety, which of course is going to be your emergency responders, sheriff, fire, but it will also be emergency communications and dispatch services to help get the communication to the first responders. Oh, I see there's a little issue, sorry. The description on that one got a little messed up. So next up is health and welfare. So this is going to be the Department of Social Services, as well as some external agencies that all work to serve the well-being of citizens. Next up is non-departmental. As the name suggests, it's items that can't really be attributed back to a specific department. So that is going to include things like debt service and our capital improvement plan, as well as some other programs that would affect the county, programs and expenses that would affect the county overall. Next is public works. This includes waste management and maintenance that support the county's infrastructure, followed by education. So this is primarily Botetourt County Public Schools, of course. There is a small portion in there, though, that is related to institutions of higher education. Parks, Recreation, and Culture includes recreational programming and facilities, as well as libraries and support for cultural organizations and endeavors. And finally, on community development, this includes planning, economic development, and support for other outside organizations that serve to help improve growth within the county. Oops. Okay, so here we have sort of the picture of how funding has been allocated to those areas based on the proposed budget. The FY adopted budget was $92.2 million. The proposed is $98.8 million, so that's an increase of $6.5 million. This does include the contribution to the schools, which is $32.4 million this year, and includes an increase of $2.4 million. So that's reflected in that very first bar up at the top. So we're going to talk about what's in some of these next and go over some of the highlights from each area. So off to the right, you'll see a listing of the departments, again, just to give a little more context of what falls under each of those categories. So some of the highlights for general government, there is a new network engineer position for technology services, as well as a software contract renewal that's pretty sizable, but it is a 5-year contract. So that's a one-time expense that would fall off next year. There's also some increases in the DMV charges for the treasurer's office. However, there is a revenue offset for that expense. Next up in judicial administration, there really wasn't much change or new for this year. There was really just some inflationary increases in administrative expenses. So in public safety, there was an increase in the cost of the Criminal Justice Academy, as well as some inflationary increases in multiple contracts that support jail functions like medical and food. There's also the conversion of an existing part-time administrative assistant to full-time in fire, as well as a new assistant chief of EMS position. There's also additional funding for the Sheriff Vehicle Replacement Program. This is to support higher costs. It's not more vehicles, it's just a higher cost for the vehicles that they have in their replacement schedule. Finally, increased support for RCACP, which is the Regional Center for Animal Care and Protection. This is a regional organization that we are a part of and fund by agreement. Okay, next is Public Works. We have the transfer of agricultural supplies budget from the sports complex. So this is not really a new thing. It's just a transferring from one functional area to another. So that's why I noted it to account for that change. There's also a new mower to support parks and recreation assets, as well as some increases to preventative maintenance service contracts. Okay, and health and welfare, there is included additional part-time wages for two individuals for the van program to expand the services that are currently provided. There's also additional support for the children's services based on the trends that we're seeing for those expenses. Okay, in Parks, Recreation, and Culture, there is a new vehicle for Parks and Recreation staff, as well as additional funding for additional park signage, and also preservation grant matching funds for historic Greenfield. In community development, there is funding for the third-party reviews, and this is the erosion and sediment and stormwater management reviews. As well as a new position for economic development. The name is still being worked on, but right now it's slated as a project manager, as well as increased support for the small business incentive grant. So under education, the proposed support for the schools this year is $32.4 million. As I mentioned before, that does include an increase of $2.4 million from the fiscal year 25 budget. There is additionally direct support, meaning it's paid for out of the county's funds for debt service, maintenance, and security, and that is approximately $3.6 million. There's also some funds for continued support for Virginia Western Community College CCAP program and Mountain Gateway Community College. Okay, in non-departmental, there's funding set aside for additional debt service to support the completion of the public safety radio project, as well as the dispatch center / Reed Mountain renovation project. There's also funding for an employee compensation increase of 3% and a one-time bonus of 1.5% to align with the amounts mandated by the state in their budget. Okay, moving into capital. So the total for the capital improvement plan in the proposed budget is about $3 million. So some of the highlights of what that includes is a tower site to support the public safety radio project, as well as the completion of the jail camera system project. I believe this is for the network upgrades, and this was something that was started last year. There's also fire vehicle and equipment replacement, as well as the recreation incentive fund, which does include the incremental $5,000 that we previously talked about for each year. There's also funding for the completion of the new tax system for the treasurer. Again, this is something that's already underway. These would be the additional funds to complete that, as well as for voting equipment, HVAC upgrades, landfill repair and maintenance, and finally, replacement of the waste compactor. So here's a little graphic representation to show how the tax dollars will be spent based on this proposed budget. So you can see education, of course, is the highest category at 33%, followed by public safety. So those two items combined make up almost 2/3 of the budget, about 64% of the total proposed budget. So as I mentioned, every year has its unique set of circumstances. For this year, one of the ongoing considerations that we have, past just budget adoption that we need to keep in mind. So the state budget was not final in time for the advertised budget. So that may result in the need to make some amendments. The decisions were made based on the best information available. And I believe the budget was actually passed earlier this week. So those numbers are final, but could result in changes to anticipated funding particularly with the schools. Additionally, obviously, there's some uncertainty of federal funding right now. So this is something we're monitoring and prepared to make changes as needed. There's nothing really right now to do, but it is something that we're monitoring and trying to stay on top of to make changes if needed. And finally, again, the quarterly appropriations to the schools to allow some additional flexibility if it's needed, especially as it relates to the first two items. So you can see the plan for that. It's not even funding. It would be 40% in the first quarter, 30% in the second, and 15% in the third and fourth. And it's stacked that way to help facilitate the needs of the schools with getting their employee contracts out in the summer. So if any more information on this is desired, you can go to the county's website. It's botetourtva.gov/budget. It will bring you to the finance page. And you'll see, and there's a little snippet of it on the screen, the fiscal year 2026 budget information. If you click on that, then these options will pop up, which is the budget calendar. There's also the meeting agendas, as well as all the detail on the revenues and expenditures that I just went over today. There's also a little QR code on there if you want to just snap that, and it'll take you right to the same page. Okay. Are there any questions at this time that I can answer?
Dave, any questions?
Hopefully it wasn't too painful.
No. We all stayed awake. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Thank you
Ms.
so
Davis,
much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, might I remind that the Budget Subcommittee had really spent a lot of time working on it? May want to let the public know that.
So I do want to thank our budget subcommittee, that is Supervisor Michael and Supervisor Clinton. Their schedule, their meeting agendas were posted at that link that Ms. Davis just showed us. They have met multiple times and gone through this really with a fine-tooth comb. I appreciate your work and the questions that went into that. I also want to include Supervisor Nicely in my appreciation for his work on the school budget task force as well, along with Supervisor Michaels. So this has been, this is the culmination of months of work. As you said, it started back in December, and we have gone through this multiple times, and there's been multiple iterations of this. So I appreciate the work on all that. That being said, I think it's time for our public hearing. I only have 4 requests to speak. If you would like to speak to us regarding the budget, please come on down. I think there's plenty of forms in the back if you want to fill that out. But that being said, we will go ahead and open the public hearing for the FY26 Botetourt County General Budget as advertised, and a public hearing on the proposed tax rates for FY26 as advertised. So the first person that I have a request to speak from is Tammy Riggs.
Good evening. I am the principal at Colonial Elementary. I also reside in Daleville, and I am here, although I feel like the decision's been made, I'm still here to strongly advocate for full funding of the Botetourt County Schools ask for the 25-26 school year, as well as capital improvement needs. What's often missed in the budget conversations that take place is a clear picture of how those decisions play out at the school level, where the real work happens, where the lives are shaped and futures are built. At the elementary level, we're facing the loss for the first time of teaching positions. This means larger class size, especially in the most foundational years of K through 2. Our students come with complex academic, emotional, and behavioral needs, and teachers must provide individualized support to help them succeed. That becomes incredibly difficult when they're stretched too thin and their ability to meet students' needs safely and effectively is compromised. I also must not sit down before I highlight the urgent facility need at Colonial that is very well known. For the past 2 years, we've operated at full capacity, repurposing every possible space, and I do not exaggerate in that, as Mr. Michael can attest to as he visited last week. We include closets, storage rooms, everything for instruction and testing. We currently serve 464 students. Our teacher's lounge is now a music room, shrinking down from 900 square feet of instructional space to 221 square feet of instructional space. Our largest classes, that gives each child 2 square feet to dance, play music, and instruments in, and this is not effective. Our preschoolers are impacted. Colonial was designed to even have 2 preschool classes, yet all of our preschoolers are bused to other schools around the county. Some 3-year-olds are riding a school bus for more than an hour one way every day to school, which is not acceptable. When Colonial was built, the decision was made not to include these classrooms at that time, even though I had mentioned that we would outgrow it in year 2. The cost at that time would have been $800,000. Now the cost will be $1.7 million. Will we make the same mistake again? If future budgets are as constrained as they're predicted to be, the county may be faced with even closing a school in the future and redrawing lines, which means we would even get more students. What are we going to do then? It will be too late. Families move to Botetourt because of our schools. Do we want to make that stay that way? Yes, the argument could be made that a lot of these cuts that people are frustrated with, that the school board made them, you guys didn't, or the board of supervisors didn't. But when they're not fully funded, they are forced to be in a no-win situation and make decisions that none of them want to make. You've tapped into the $30 million reserve, about $2 million for this coming budget, and I understand that. Talking to neighboring divisions or neighboring counties, the recommendation is between 10 and 20% of the operating budget be in reserve. If we met in the middle at 15%, that would be a $22 million reserve instead of a 30, which means there could indeed be room for the 1.7 to make the permanent change that we need to for the infrastructural need at Colonial. You have the opportunity to make a lasting impact by fully funding our schools. I urge you to be the leaders who invest boldly in our children and in the future of our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Danny Goad.
Thank you, Danny.
Hello, my name's Danny Goad. I live in the Valley District. I've given you a little bit of information on the county budget. It seems like most of the budget information at budget time is based on either what people have requested for that given year and maybe at most compared to the prior year, which is still in process. The spending that you're asking for in the advertised budget is $96.8 million versus 92 for last year. If we go over to the next page, what that shows is the real estate tax. The last data point is what is proposed for this year in terms of dollars. It's something over 39 million, and you have the exact figures in the detailed budget that the county gives you. Last year, in FY '25, you can see how much more you're spending this year versus last year. And last year, when the communications director produced an article and said that taxes did not go up in Botetourt County, the numbers say something different. Going from 31 million to over 37 million. I would ask you to look long term. If you go back to the first graph, where we go back 15 years or so, it hasn't been that long ago that Botetourt County had a budget of $50 million. And I just wanted to provide these simple graphs for you to look at to see what's happening over time. Over that period of time, the number of people that live in Botetourt County has stayed right around 33,500 people. It's virtually unchanged over that period of time. And the schools portion, or the county's portion of the school budget, those figures, enrollment figures, have dropped over 500 pupils in the last few years, and still we're spending more and more. I just wanted to provide this information to you. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to ask me, and I'll provide you a copy as well, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Nicole Tilley.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Nicole Tilley, and I'm in the Amsterdam district. I am disappointed but not surprised by the proposed budget and its negative impacts on our education system. The current funding should be allocated fully to the public schools. If a decision is made to continue to cut funding from the schools, our most vulnerable students will suffer. The work our teachers, aides, and staff do is vital to our students' success. If the schools are not fully funded, our teachers will take on the burden to work more, which will lead to a lower quality of education. People seek to move to Botetourt because we have smaller class sizes and excellent curriculum. The proposed budget will lower Botetourt County standards if you do not take action. As a mother of a child with special needs, I wanted to personally thank Mr. Anderson, Ms. Seville, and the teachers at Trouttville Elementary School for the work they have poured into my son. He has made significant improvements in his reading and in his academics overall. I'm overjoyed that he has friends and he enjoys school. I want our success story to be a reality for other students, and that only happens with proper funding. Please reconsider the budget and make education a priority. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lee Martell.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thanks to Ms. Kathleen Davis for her enormous work. I followed the county budget process last year and this year. It's astounding to me that a county with a population that is nearly remaining flat has a budget that is growing at the rate Botetourt's is. In following the school board's budgeting process this year, I've seen where some of that county expenditure increase is originating. BCPS has a declining student population. It's lost over 500 students in 10 years, about 11% of its users. Budgets don't increase when organizations' consumers decrease by over 10%. That isn't how anything sustainable works. If that's occurring, the organization has to streamline, not bloat. The county has a $66.4 million annual budget before the schools that serves 34,135 people. BCPS has an annual budget of $80 million that serves a population of 4,261 students. Just let those numbers sink in. Of the county's annual budget, 33% goes to the school system, not counting the $3 million in debt service that the county pays for the schools. BCPS receives the greatest portion of the county's expenditure annually. The public safety portion is 31%, and all county residents use that. We all like crime-free communities and roads without reckless driving and having an ambulance or fire truck on call. And I think that's an appropriate use of tax revenue. The private sector cannot offer those services. What the private sector does offer and did for hundreds of years before about 1925, 1935 is education. We had doctors, lawyers, businessmen, innovators, scientists, all these before we had government schools. Usually the private sector does everything better, cheaper, and faster than government. The blame for where the real world impact happens at the teacher and class level lies internally with BCPS mismanagement, not with the county taxpayers. Nobody wants to cut their own budget, but in slim times it's necessary for everyone. In BCPS, students are given tax-funded meals and snacks, medical care, behavioral and mental health care, recreational, sports, and associated clothing, transportation, and some education. Just to remind everyone wanting more tax money for the government schools, many homeschooled and private schooled alternative school children live in this county. Those homeschool parents are funding their own children's education, and they are subsidizing the above listed services for the children of their neighbors. Because if they don't, the county will take their homes. So this year, the county has increased funding for the schools by $2.4 million over last year, and we're still getting requests for more. They have enough. They need to streamline. Please don't give them more. Thank you.
Thank you. The last request that I have is Jenny McConaughey.
Good evening. Thank you for having this meeting and allowing the community to come together. My name's Jenny McConaughey. I'm in the Valley District. I don't have an elaborate speech. I just have concerns. As a parent of a student, I've got 2 kids in the school system. I'm also a staff member at Lord Botetourt High School, and I am also the president of the PTSO that does a lot of extras for the kids in the community to make things like after prom happen for our students. It was really disheartening when the school budget came out of the cuts that were having to be made this year, safety being one that is very concerning to me. I work the front doors at the high school. People come, people go, and there needs to be more security in the schools. We're at a time right now where safety is, we're unsure of our students. It's very disheartening. I know it sounds like a broken record, but the condition of Lord Botetourt High School has to be addressed. I don't know if any of you have stepped foot in Lord Botetourt High School, but you can visibly see that things need to change. For example, the lack and/or of no hot water in the building. Holes and cracks in the foundation covered by rugs so students don't trip. Rodents of all kinds throughout the building, rats, mice, feces that our students live in. Black mold that is visible in the vestibule when you walk into the main office. As a supervisor, has anyone asked to see these actual conditions? Recently, you stated in the flat revenue growth on the budget overview, business was going to stay about the same. Whereas there was a Facebook post from a county administrator on April the 2nd stating business is booming, jobs grew 9%, wages up 23%, jobs 27%, and manufacturing up 20%. Sounds like our county's growing in that direction. Why aren't our schools following that? I just ask for everyone on the board to visit your local school and see the conditions, ask to see the schools. It's really disheartening for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Any comments from board members?
Madam Chair, I'll just say that from a procedural viewpoint, and this isn't what the citizens are necessarily interested in, I know, but from a procedural viewpoint, hats off to the county staff, because we did start earlier. We were more systematic, and we were able, that a good start and a systematic process resulted in a good a good outcome. As far as the goal, which was to come up with a reasonable budget that, in my opinion anyway, kind of suits the traditional definition of a compromise. And all this is compromise. And we heard several people say absolutely correctly, there's competing needs. And the only outcome, the only way to address competing needs is through some type of compromise. And compromises, you know, they have pros and cons, and you often hear a compromise defined as nobody's happy with the outcome, but everybody's at least comfortable. And I feel like we got there. Now, we've had good input tonight. There are some things that we may not have been aware of. There's still some opportunity to make some changes in the budget, but frankly, I'm comfortable with where it is right now. I'm speaking for myself as a member of the budget committee.
Thank you. Other comments?
No, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. We have received some communication via email as well. I know that I have got some meetings set up this week with members of my constituency that have asked questions, and I'm meeting them following tonight's meeting, and I will be getting together with people who want to discuss this. I think Supervisor Clinton really hit it on the head. You see tonight, just from our divided house here, there are many competing needs, and we must find a way to compromise and work together to solve these problems. That is the real challenge before us, because I think everyone that spoke had a very valid reason for speaking, and they had very valuable things to say. It's a hard job to reconcile all that. We do promise to try to do our best to do that. And as he said, compromise often makes no one happy, but maybe we can at least keep doing the great work that many of us are doing, and all of you want to see done. So I thank you very much for being here. I thank you for staying engaged in this process. And I'm happy to talk with folks outside of this forum about the decisions that we need to make. So with that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moving.
Are there two? I thought we were doing them both in one.
There should just be the. Says on here that there are two public hearings. That is what we advertised.
Do I have a motion to close the first public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now have a public hearing on the proposed tax rate for the FY26 year as advertised. Let's open that public hearing. Do I have anyone who would like to speak? Danny Goode. Okay.
Thanks again for letting me speak. I want to talk about, I gave you a couple graphs. The second graph I gave you is the real estate taxes. And last year, the real estate tax rate, I believe, was cut from 79 cents to 70 cents. And what was said then was that we would keep the real estate taxes level. And if you look at that graph, you can see that the anticipated revenue for this year has increased significantly even over what it was last year. And last year it was more than a 20% increase. I would highly recommend that we reduce the real estate tax rate to get it back down to what the intentions were last year of having level funding from the real estate taxes. It's, I don't know how much of the the assessment change affected 2025's real estate taxes in this number right here. It may have affected it for half the year, or maybe that's all been adjusted out of it. But this number could even be even higher if those numbers for last year were padded. So I guess there's normally a little bit of wiggle room when you're budgeting, but I would encourage you to look closely not only at the figure for what was budgeted last year, but also to look at where our collections are related to what we thought it would be, or what you thought it would be when last year's budget was developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak during the second public hearing? Seeing no one, I will close that public hearing. Any further comments? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.